There are people who make the world feel louder just by walking into a room. People who carry some kind of invisible energy wherever they go. When a person like that steps through the classroom door, the air itself seems to shift. Suddenly fuller, suddenly more alive with something hard to name. When that person smiles, even the most exhausted, half-asleep faces around her seem a little less miserable, like the morning became slightly more survivable. When that person waves at someone in the hallway, that lucky someone spends the rest of the day walking around, like they just received a personal blessing from above. Himari was exactly the kind of girl. Bright, warm, effortlessly magnetic, and completely impossible to ignore no matter how badly you wanted to. Honestly, I never quite understood how people like her work. What kind of engine ran underneath all that energy and light she seemed to pour out constantly? It is not that I hated her or anything like that. I was not the brooding guy in the back row staring out the window and thinking deep thoughts about the emptiness of existence. No, I simply preferred quiet. I preferred my school days calm, invisible, and completely free of drama, unnecessary attention, and complications I did not ask for. And above all, I preferred my days free of Himari. That was the plan. That had always been the plan. And like most plans, it did not survive contact with reality. Itsuki, good morning. The voice reached me the very second I stepped through the classroom door, far too cheerful for 8 in the morning, completely unfair. Good morning, I said flatly, walking to my desk without stopping. Himari, the girl, was already seated at her spot by the window, watching me like I had committed some crime. She told me that did not count as a greeting, that my voice had less warmth in it than a can of cold coffee from a vending machine sitting out in winter. At least it is honest, I said. She called me a horrible person. The kid sitting nearby laughed at that. I set my bag down and said absolutely nothing back. That was exactly why I had decided long ago that I wanted nothing to do with people like Himari. Nothing at all, if I could help it, ever. Himari was the kind of girl the entire school knew, not necessarily closely, but by name, always by name, from every direction and every grade level. Girls from other classes, boys from sports clubs, younger students, teachers. Everyone spoke to her with the easy comfort of talking to something that had always been there. Like she was just part of the school landscape, like a well-placed bulletin board, only significantly more pleasant to look at and far harder to simply walk past. If someone said the name Himari, not a single person in the building would ever ask which one they meant. There was only one Himari anyone ever meant. I was just Itsuki. No one ever called across a hallway to get my attention, and I was perfectly, completely fine with all of that. Probably Itsuki. I looked up slowly. The young woman had turned halfway toward me, leaning forward just a little, a tiny smile already forming on her face. You have the face of someone mentally writing their will before first period again, she said. I told her I was simply thinking about how to survive the day in peace. Meaning without me? She asked. Ideally. Yes, I answered. She said that was cruel. I said it was realistic. She puffed her cheeks and stared at me with dramatic disapproval. A few long seconds of that stare passed between us. Then she smiled again, bright and easy, and told me she had bad news. I told her not to start. She had already started. She wanted me to help her carry boxes and documents to the student council room after school. I said no immediately. She asked why I had answered so fast. I explained, because answering fast is the only way to shorten this conversation. I said. She called me rude. Then she cleared her throat, put on an extremely polite voice, and asked again word for word. I said no again. She asked what was wrong with me. I said the question was too broad. She said it was not a philosophy question. I told her it sounded like the beginning of one. Himari stared at me for a few seconds. Then she laughed, easy and warm and completely unbothered, as if I had genuinely said something funny instead of just trying to protect my peace. Strange person. I turned my gaze to the window and let the noise of the morning fill the space between us so I did not have to keep thinking about how effortless she made everything look. The courtyard outside was already filled with people rushing in, cramming homework with desperate faces, calling out to each other across the yard. A completely ordinary school morning. After school, I helped her carry the boxes anyway, not because she had convinced me, not because I had nothing else to do with my afternoon. I want to be very clear about that. By fourth period, I had already fully imagined the scene of Himari trailing me all the way to the school gate, complaining loudly to every person she encountered along the way. I still had just enough self-preservation instinct left to prevent the particular scenario from playing out, so I picked up the box. That was the full extent of my reasoning. You know, she said, the young woman balancing a stack of folders while I carried a box packed like someone had stored bricks inside it. You really do not look like a kind person at all. Then why did you ask me specifically? I said. Because you grumble, but you still help, she replied simply. I told her that was not a compliment. She agreed she had not been trying to give one. She frowned for a moment, tilted her head like she was approaching the question from a more serious angle, then delivered her verdict with calm and complete confidence. You are not kind. You just have the face of someone who accidentally does kind things sometimes. It keeps happening to you without your permission, and it shows. Disturbingly accurate, I admitted. She said she knew it. I said that was also not a compliment. She asked if it had sounded just a little bit cute anyway. I said no, absolutely not. She called me boring. I told her she was too loud. She said at least I was never bored around her. I looked at her and chose not to answer that one out loud. She was smiling the way she always smiled, bright and open and completely at ease. Like being this way cost her nothing and came as naturally as breathing in the morning air. Like nothing in this world could ever make her go quiet, or drop her gaze, or lose that easy warmth she carried everywhere she went with her, every single ordinary day. That was probably exactly why what happened next felt so completely and deeply wrong to witness. Because it did not match the person I had been sitting next to all morning. When we reached the student council room, the door was locked. Himari stopped. I set the box down and looked at the lock. Definitely closed. The young woman pulled out her phone, frowning. She muttered that the senpai from the council had messaged her to bring everything after school. I told her the senpai had clearly set her up. She told me not to make it sound dramatic. I reminded her that the person who had been made to carry a box full of bricks had a right to some drama. She sighed and said she would check the teacher's office for the key. I asked what would happen if I just left while she was gone. The girl gave me a completely serious look and said she would tell everyone in class I had cried during the math practice test. I said that was slander. She said it sounded believable enough to work just fine. I said she was a horrible person. She thanked me. I told her that had not been a compliment at all. She said she had decided it was anyway. Then she waved at me, turned, and walked quickly toward the staircase, leaving me alone in a corridor that had gone very quiet very fast. After school, this building always transformed into something different. During the day it roared with life. By evening, a strange hollowness crept in, like the walls had finally gotten tired of pretending. Distant voices drifted from the gym. Club members called to each other somewhere outside. Through the windows, the setting sun was already painting the hallway walls a warm and fading orange. Minutes passed. I looked in the direction Himari had gone. She was still not back. I muttered something under my breath and picked the box back up to at least move closer to the stairs. And that was when I heard it, a sound. Very quiet. So quiet that in any other moment, at any busier point in the day, I probably would have walked straight past it without noticing. Something like a broken exhale. Like someone pressing very hard against a tremor in their voice to keep it from escaping into the hallway where anyone passing by could hear it. I stopped walking. At the far end of the corridor, the door to one of the empty classrooms stood slightly open. A thin strip of warm golden light from the setting sun fell through the gap, and something in my chest told me immediately that this was going to be something I should not see. I was not planning to look inside. I need to be completely clear about that, but my body moved before I could argue with it. One step closer, then another, until I was standing at the gap in the door. And then I looked through, and then I completely froze. Standing at the window with her back to the door, looking out at the orange evening sky above the school grounds, was Himari. The young woman who had been laughing at me minutes ago, the same girl who had been arguing with me and joking and smiling all the way through the hallway, who had looked like absolutely nothing in the world could ever reach her. Right now, her shoulders were trembling, small, barely visible shudders running through them while she stood alone in the fading light of the empty classroom with no audience to perform for. One of her hands gripped the windowsill, the other was moving quickly across her face, pressing at the corners of her eyes, as if trying to erase the evidence before anyone could see it. For a moment, my mind went completely blank and quiet. I just stood there in the doorway, looking at her, unable to move or look away or make myself pretend I had seen nothing. Looking at her lowered head, at the way her body was holding itself together tightly, at the silence around her that did not fit the person I had been sitting next to all morning. Something about this felt deeply wrong to witness. Not because crying is wrong, but because I was seeing a version of Himari that it was very obvious no one was supposed to see. A version she had clearly been working very hard to keep completely hidden from everyone around her. And I had just walked into it by accident, holding a box in the middle of an empty hallway, and standing there in the corridor. I had only one thought in my head. I had just seen something I was never meant to see. Something that was never meant to belong to me. Maybe that was the exact moment where my quiet, uncomplicated school life stopped being either of those things. Maybe this was truly where everything began. Drop a comment below if you already felt something was off about Himari from the very start. You know what to do if you want to see what happens next. Itsuki, the voice came out soft. Way too soft for a person like Himari. Quiet in a way that did not belong to her at all. I froze at the doorway like someone who had just been caught doing something they absolutely could not explain or talk their way out of. Several seconds passed in complete silence inside that empty classroom. Outside, the wind stirred the leaves in the school courtyard below. Somewhere far off, club members called to each other. Himari turned around slowly to face me. Her eyes were slightly red at the edges, but honestly, that was not the worst part of what I was looking at right now. The worst part was how fast the smile appeared on her face. Too practiced, too smooth, too perfectly placed, like it had been waiting just under the surface for exactly this moment. How long have you been standing there? She asked, in a tone so casual you would think we had just run into each other completely by chance in the middle of a crowded hallway. I should have lied. Any reasonable person standing in that doorway would have lied without a second thought and saved everyone the discomfort of what came next. I could have said I had just arrived. I could have said I had not seen anything. I could have pretended I had walked into the wrong room entirely and backed out quietly. But every single one of those reasonable options disappeared from my head at exactly the moment I needed them most, which is the specific kind of bad luck that seems to follow me around. My voice came out rougher than I intended. I cleared my throat and tried again. I did not see anything, I said. That was what came out. Several seconds of silence passed between us. Himari just looked at me steadily without moving. Then she quietly started laughing to herself. That was terrible, she said. I asked what she meant. She told me it was the least convincing I did not see anything she had ever heard from another human being in her entire life. I was trying, I said. No, she replied. You really were not. There was nothing I could say to that, because she was right. It had been objectively terrible. She turned back to the window and quickly pressed her fingers beneath her eyes, smoothing away whatever traces were left of what I had walked in on a moment ago. The light falling through the glass painted her shoulders and her hair in warm orange tones. If I had arrived even 30 seconds later, she would have looked like any other girl pausing to think by a window. But I had not arrived 30 seconds later. I had arrived when I did, and now I could nod and feel the way her shoulders had been moving when I first looked through the door. You saw everything, didn't you? She said. It was not really a question, more like a statement she was testing the weight of out loud. I did not answer. She told me that silence counted as a yes. I asked her why she had bothered asking then. She said she wanted to confirm exactly how bad I was at lying. The silence that settled between us after that was strange. Not the comfortable kind between people who know each other well enough to not need words. Not the heavy kind that follows a fight. This was the awkward silence of the people where one had accidentally gone somewhere the other had not invited them, and neither one had yet decided what to do about it. Eventually, I exhaled. Sorry, I said. She tilted her head slightly and asked what I was apologizing for. I told her I was apologizing for seeing what I saw. Himari looked at me carefully then, like she was trying to read whether I was mocking her or actually serious. A few seconds went by. You are always the strange, she asked finally. I said sometimes. She told me that usually people apologize for looking, not for seeing. I explained that I had not been trying to look. But you did look, she said. By accident, I replied. Well, she said, that changes everything then. She said that last part completely flat, no warmth in it at all. I stayed quiet. She did too. Then, unexpectedly, the young woman let out a breath and sat down on the nearest chair like her legs had quietly run out of the energy to hold her upright. It was such a small movement, such a simple thing. But after everything I had just witnessed, I saw it differently than I would have seen it yesterday. Himari did not have infinite energy. She just hit it well. If you start saying something comforting right now, she said, looking at the floor, I am going to assume you have some kind of illness. I told her I was not planning to say anything comforting. She said good. I told her I also did not know how to comfort people. She said that was also good. I told her I was not going to ask unnecessary questions either. At that, she finally looked up at me. Why not? She asked. I shrugged and said it was obvious she did not want to talk about it. She stared at me. And that is enough reason for you? I told her yes. That was enough. Himari kept looking at me for a few more seconds like I had said something deeply unusual. Then she laughed, very quietly, almost under her breath. People are usually a lot nosier, she said. I told her I was trying very hard to survive until graduation without complications. She asked if that was seriously my life goal. Finish school quietly. I said, very boring, she replied. Also very safe, I said back. Am I dangerous then? She asked. I said yes, without any hesitation whatsoever. She seemed genuinely interested by that. That much, she said. I pointed out that I was already carrying boxes for the student council despite having refused clearly and immediately when she first asked me. She laughed again. This time, the laugh sounded more like the one I had been hearing all day. Alive and light and real. It had come back, at least partway, like something settling back into place after being briefly knocked loose. But I already knew now that it was not the whole picture. I had seen the other side of it, and I could not unsee that, no matter how naturally she wore the bright version on top. All right, said Himari, standing up from the chair. Let's make a deal. I told her immediately that I did not like how that sounded. You tell no one about this, she said. I told her I had not been planning to tell anyone about anything. She said she knew. I asked why she was making a deal about something I was already going to do. And in return, she continued, ignoring my question entirely, I will pretend you never saw anything. I said that was convenient. She said very much so. She stepped a little closer and narrowed her eyes at me. She told me that if I ever said a single word to anyone, she would absolutely spread the rumor about me crying at the math test. I asked why she kept coming back to that specific math test. She said it was because it was believable. I called her logic cruel. She thanked me. I said that had not been a compliment. She said she had decided it was, and despite the familiar rhythm of the exchange, something in her voice still had the fragile quality underneath it, like one wrong step and the whole thing would crack. I did not ask why she had been crying. I had told her I would not, and I meant it, but I found myself asking something else before I could think clearly enough to stop myself. Are you okay? Himari blinked, just once, very fast, but I caught it clearly, and for just a fraction of a second, that smooth, effortless smile of hers shifted, just slightly, just barely. How does it look to you? She asked. I said I did not know. She said that was a very honest answer. I agreed that it was probably the most honest answer I had available right now. She turned away and walked toward the door of the empty classroom. Come on, she said. Otherwise, we will be standing in here until midnight and someone will find us and ask questions. What about the key? I asked, following her out into the corridor. She checked her phone and said someone had messaged her that the room was already unlocked now. I said the timing was remarkable to see. She said, the world is not entirely cruel. I told her I would hold off on that conclusion for now. She smiled at that, just a little, and we walked together down the hallway toward the student council room. The school was nearly empty. The sunset light lay in long warm stripes across the floor of the corridor, and our footsteps sounded too loud in all that evening quiet. I picked up the box I had left against the wall and followed a step behind her. From the outside, she looked the same as always. Same walk, same ease, same rhythm in every movement. But now every time she turned her head or tucked her hair behind her ear, I found myself thinking about those trembling shoulders I had seen against the window. It was deeply irritating, because I had not wanted to think about her. Not like this. Not in this particular way. Which was too close and too personal for someone who had very deliberately chosen a quiet and uncomplicated school life. By the way, said Himari, walking ahead without turning around, you are going to have to take some responsibility for all of this. For what exactly? I asked. For seeing my secret, she said simply. I told her I had already explained that it was an accident. She said accidents still had consequences in her personal system of rules. I told her that was a terrible internal legal system. She said it was a very convenient one. Horrible person. I said, thank you, she said. We walked the rest of the way in silence. The student council room was open and lit when we arrived. 2 students in council armbands were sorting things at the desks inside. The tall boy with glasses looked up when we came through the door. He thanked Himari for bringing the materials over, apologized for having to step away earlier. Himari replied in her usual bright voice, immediately easy and natural, like a switch had been flipped. No problem at all, she said. I just found myself some free labor. She pointed her thumb at me. The boy with glasses looked at me with a kind of respect I had done absolutely nothing to deserve. Thanks, he said. Are you in her class? I told him unfortunately yes. Himari made a noise of offense beside me. I ignored it. The other council member, a short girl with cropped hair, quietly laughed. You'd get along well, the short girl said. No, I said immediately. Yes, said Himari at the exact same time. A short pause. See, said Himari. Complete mutual understanding. I said that was not how it worked. I set the box down on the table and silently promised myself that I would go straight home after this and not think about Himari or her shifting moods, or the scene in the empty classroom for the rest of the evening. That was an excellent plan. Clean, simple, completely achievable for any normal person. I turned toward the door with full intention of leaving. Itsuki, wait, said Himari from behind me. I turned around. The young woman was standing near the entrance to the student council room, a folder pressed to her chest, wearing that same light, easy smile. What now? I asked. She told me to come in early tomorrow. I asked why. She said she needed help before first period. I said no. She said it was not a question. I said my answer did not have to be one either. You'll come, she said. No. I said, you will come, she said again. I asked her what gave her the idea that she had any authority over my morning schedule whatsoever. Himari tilted her head, and then she said something in a slightly different tone, quieter, less performance in it than usual. Because now I have a feeling you won't say no. I did not find an answer to that fast enough, and by the time I had one ready, she had already smiled again like nothing had happened and waved at me from the doorway. See you tomorrow, Itsuki. She turned and was gone down the corridor before I could respond. I walked out into the empty hallway, feeling something I could not name and did not particularly want to. The next morning I arrived at school earlier than I normally would. I hated myself the entire walk there. Idiot, I muttered at my own shoes while changing them at my locker. Not because I had come early, but because I genuinely could not answer myself honestly if someone had asked me exactly why I had. I had several reasons. None of them felt like the whole truth. To check that Himari was fine. To show that last night had not affected me. To head off whatever public chaos she would cause if I made her wait. Probably all three at once, layered one on top of another. When I stepped into the classroom, it was almost empty. Just one person at the window seat. Himari looked up when she heard my footsteps, and for one brief, unguarded moment, something moved across her face. Surprise. Real, unperformed surprise. The kind that happens before someone has time to put their expression together the way they want it to be seen. It lasted only a second. Then the young woman smiled. "Oh, you actually came," she said. I told her I was surprised too. She told me that meant I was kind after all. I told her not to jump to conclusions. On my desk sat a small carton of strawberry milk and a little bag with a melon bun inside it. I looked at them. Then I looked at Himari. "What is this?" I asked. "A bribe," she said without hesitation. I asked what for. She said obviously for my silence. I stared at her. "You are seriously trying to purchase my integrity with a melon bun? Is it too cheap?" she asked. "Very," I said. "I have budget constraints," she said, completely deadpan. I let out a long breath and sat down at my desk. I was not going to say anything regardless. I said, "I know," she replied. "Then why?" I asked. She looked out the window for a moment. "I just wanted to," she said simply. That answer was too simple. Exactly simple enough that I knew immediately she was hiding something behind it. But I did not push. I picked up the milk carton instead. "Just so you know," I said, inserting the straw, "this does not mean I accept whatever ongoing arrangement you seem to be building here without my input. Such a complicated person," she said. "It is a defense mechanism," I told her. "Against what?" she asked. I took a long sip of the strawberry milk. "Against you," I said. Himari laughed, and just at that moment, the door slid open and the first wave of classmates began filling the room with noise and greetings and the familiar chaos of morning. Within about 4 seconds, Himari had already transformed back. "Good morning," she called out brightly, turning toward the door. "Oh, you're early today. You know how it is." Her voice was warm and easy and full. The classroom filled around her and she became the center of it all again, the way she always did, effortlessly, like breathing. The girl everyone wanted to talk to. The girl who always had something to say. I looked at my desk and told myself firmly to stop. I had accepted the bribe. I owed her nothing beyond that. I would drink the milk and survive this morning. But at some point, while I was not paying attention, Himari glanced across the room through the gap between the classmates. She caught my eye for just a second, and she smiled. Not the big open performance smile she was wearing for everyone else in the room. Something smaller. Something that was not meant for anyone in the classroom except me. I looked away immediately. Back to the window. Back to the totally ordinary and completely uncomplicated school morning I had been hoping for. I was not going to read anything into that, not at all. But the problem was already sitting there quietly in the back of my head, stubborn and unhelpful. No matter how hard I tried to ignore it, I had just seen a version of Himari that nobody else in the room had seen. And somehow, without my permission, that had already made everything between us feel different. Reply in the comments if you have ever had someone accidentally see a side of you that you were not ready to show. Because Itsuki is about to find out that secrets have a way of pulling people closer. From the moment the rest of the class started filing in that morning, Himari flipped a switch so fast it was almost dizzying to watch happen in real time. 1 second she was sitting at her window seat with that quiet, smaller version of herself still barely visible around the edges. The next second she was fully lit up. "Good morning," she called out to the first person through the door. Then the second. Then the third, each greeting warm and easy, like she had been storing them up since dawn. The classroom filled with voices and the scrape of chairs and the familiar low roar of 20 people, starting their morning all at once. Normal and entirely ordinary, and Himari was at the center of it, the way she always was. So naturally that anyone looking in from the outside would never have guessed that anything had happened at all. I turned back to my desk and told myself to stay there. Drink the milk, eat the bun, get through the day without making any of this bigger than it already was. The plan lasted approximately 4 minutes before she appeared at the edge of my desk again, exactly as I had expected it to. "Itsuki." I looked up. The young woman was standing right there, close enough that the classmates nearby glanced over with mild curiosity, before going back to their own conversations. "What?" I said. It came out flatter than intended. She asked if I had drunk the milk yet. I pointed out that she could see the carton on my desk and assessed that herself. "I want to hear you confirm it," she said. I told her that normal people did not monitor the consumption of their own bribes. She said she was not normal, which I could not argue with. I told her I had almost finished the milk. She told me to eat the bun too. I asked why she was managing my breakfast. "Because it is my bribe," she said. "My rules. Normal bribes do not come with terms and conditions," I said. She said hers did. I said her entire internal rulebook was a disaster. She said it worked for her. I said I was not her. "True," she said, leaning just slightly on the edge of my desk. "But you were eating the bun." I looked at her. She looked back at me with total patience and zero intention of moving. I picked up the melon bun. She nodded once with the satisfaction of someone who had just won a negotiation worth significantly more than a convenience store pastry, and walked away. 2 of the girls nearby watched her go, then looked at me, then back at each other. I pretended to find the cover of my textbook suddenly very interesting and did not make eye contact with anyone. The morning moved forward the way mornings always do, period after period, with the usual background noise of teachers talking and chalk on boards and pages being turned over. I almost did not watch her. I was getting better at it. Every time my attention started drifting toward the window seat, I pulled it back deliberately, like reeling in a line. But then the first period ended, and she was suddenly at my desk again, this time asking to borrow a pen. She had 3 perfectly good ones sitting right in front of her. I had seen them. I gave her the pen anyway and told her to return it. She said she would see about that. I said that was not the answer. She was already walking back to her seat. By the time the second period started, she had not returned it. I stared at the back of her head. She did not turn around. Somehow she knew I was staring and found it funny. I could tell. Then, when no one was paying attention to either of us, she turned just enough to speak quietly, right at the edge of being audible to anyone else. "Stop looking so tense," she said. "People are going to notice," she added. I told her under my breath that I was not tense. She said I absolutely was. She told me to act normal. I said I was acting perfectly normal. She gave me a look that said she disagreed with that completely, then turned back to the front of the class like nothing had happened. I stared at the board and tried to remember what the teacher was saying. This was the part that was genuinely uncomfortable about all of it. Not the secret itself. Not the deal we had made. Not even the melon bun on my desk or the borrowed pen she had no intention of returning. It was that Himari was aware of exactly how I was behaving around her now. She had noticed the shift. She was tracking it, and she was using it, casually and without any apology whatsoever. I had walked into that empty classroom by accident, but somehow by the following morning I was already caught inside something with a shape I could not fully see yet. At the big break, her friend approached. The tall girl with short dark hair, the one who had made a comment the day before about Himari spending too much time near my desk. The young woman walked up, looked at both of us, and then looked at Himari with a specific expression of someone who had already formed an opinion and was enjoying having it confirmed. "Himari," she said, "you have been hovering around his desk all morning." Himari said she had not been hovering. She had been visiting. Her friend said those were the same thing. I said nothing. The friend looked at me. "Itsuki, do you know that she does not usually do this with people? Like, 2 days in a row is not her normal pattern." Himari cut in before I could respond. She said I was useful. She said I was convenient. She said she was simply making efficient use of available resources. I said I was right there in the room. "I know," said Himari pleasantly. Her friend looked between us again with that same expression, like someone watching a situation develop that they fully intended to bring up later with other people. "You two are weird," she announced, and walked away apparently satisfied. Himari watched her go. Then she turned to me. "She is going to talk about this," she said. "Yes," I agreed. "Is that going to be a problem?" she asked. I thought about it. "That depends entirely on what she says," I replied. Himari nodded slowly, like she was filing that answer away somewhere. The afternoon passed with more of the same. Himari orbited around me in a way that was just close enough to be obvious to anyone paying attention, but just casual enough to be completely deniable. She dropped a note on my desk during the third period. I unfolded it under the desk. It said, "You are still making the face." I wrote back, "You are still not returning my pen." She did not write back to that. When the teacher called on her, she answered smoothly and correctly and then immediately resumed doing whatever she was doing before, which apparently included thinking about my facial expressions. By the time the last period ended and the teacher made the announcement about needing people to carry materials to the library, I had already accepted my fate before my name was even called. "Himari," said the teacher. Then a pause. "And Itsuki." Of course. There was a muffled laugh from somewhere in the room. I did not look for the source. There was no point. We walked to the library side by side, each carrying a portion of the materials the teacher had handed us. The corridor was quieter now, just the distant sound of clubs and the soft evening light through the windows. After a few minutes of walking, Himari said, "You were tense all day." I said I was not. She said I was. I said even if I was, she was the reason, which she should acknowledge as relevant information. "How does it feel?" she said, not really asking, "to not be able to go back to pretending I am just some loud girl in your class?" I told her I had never said she was just that. "But you thought it," she said. I did not deny it. She nodded like that was fair. We kept walking. The light outside the windows had gone soft and orange again, like the evening before. "Can I ask you something?" she said after another stretch of quiet. I told her she could ask. She said, "Why did you not just walk away when you heard the sound?" Most people would have. I thought about that honestly for a moment. "I do not know," I said. "Maybe I should have." She made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. "Probably," she said. "But you did not." "No," I said. "I did not." We arrived at the library and pushed through the door. The librarian looked up briefly, then went back to her records without a word. The old section was quiet and warm. We found the right area and started organizing the materials into the labeled boxes, already lined up against the wall. The work was simple and required almost no discussion, which should have been a relief. Instead, the quiet had a different quality to it than the quiet in the hallway. Closer, more contained, like the small space between the shelves of old books had its own atmosphere. After a few minutes, I noticed that Himari had slowed down. She was moving through the folders, but not really reading anything, just sorting slowly. Her attention somewhere else entirely. "You checked out again," I said. She blinked and looked at me. "What?" I repeated what I had said. She looked briefly annoyed, then looked away. "I told you. You are too observant." "You said that was a complaint," I said. "It still is," she replied. I set a folder in the correct box. "What are you thinking about?" I asked. She paused. "Why are you asking?" she said. "When you promised not to ask unnecessary questions." I told her I had decided this one was necessary. She looked at me with an expression I could not fully read. "When people get used to you being cheerful all the time," she said slowly, looking down at the folder in her hands, "they get uncomfortable when you are not." "Did you know that?" I said I could imagine. She nodded. "So you learn to stay cheerful," she continued, "because the alternative is making everyone around you feel awkward and then having to deal with that too." She put the folder in the box. "It is honestly just easier. People like simple versions of other people. The version of me that is always okay is a lot easier for everyone to be around." I did not say anything for a moment. Then I asked, "What about for you?" She tilted her head like the question had surprised her from an angle she had not expected it to come from. She looked at me quietly for a few seconds. Then she said, "Sometimes I like her too." A pause. "And sometimes I am very tired of her." The words settled between us and neither of us moved to fill the space around them. Outside, somewhere across the school grounds, someone shouted on the sports field. The sound came and went. "You are too honest," she said eventually. I told her I had heard that. She said I had not learned from it. I said honesty was not always a learnable skill. She gave a small laugh at that. We went back to the folders. A few more minutes passed. Then Himari asked, without looking at me, "Does it bother you knowing?" I asked her to be more specific. "Knowing the other version," she said. I thought about it, genuinely thought about it, because she was asking for a real answer and not just something that would make the moment easier. "No," I said. "It does not bother me." She looked up. "Why not?" I shrugged. "Because it is just you. There is not a fake version and a real version. They are both real. One is just more work to carry around than the other." Himari stared at me for a moment. The kind of stare that means someone is trying to work out if you actually meant that or if you are performing a version of sensitivity you watched in a movie somewhere. Then she made a face that was hard to categorize. Not quite a smile. Not quite something else. Something between the two that I had not seen her wear before at any point during the day. "Itsuki," she said, "you are a very strange person." I told her I was aware of that. She said it was not necessarily a bad thing. I said that was the most diplomatic thing she had said to me in 2 days. Just then, from behind the shelving unit at the far end of the library, a familiar voice emerged. Himari." We both turned at the same time. Her short-haired friend stepped into view. The girl looked at us, then at the boxes, then at us again. The expression that settled on her face was the expression of someone who had just stumbled onto a situation far more interesting than returning a library book. "Ah," she said, slowly, and with obvious satisfaction. "So this is where you two were." I said we were doing a school task. She said, "Of course." Her tone implied she believed roughly 30% of that. "You know," said the friend, looking at Himari with a small smile. "You were never in the library after school, ever. Not once in 3 years." Himari told her that people could change their habits. "With the quietest guy in class," the friend added. "In the back corner." She paused. "On a Tuesday." I said none of those details were relevant. She said they absolutely all were. Himari stepped forward. "Minna," she said, in a tone that had a clear warning somewhere inside it. Minna raised both hands in the air like she was surrendering to something entirely enjoyable. "I am not saying anything," Minna said. She was clearly saying something. "I am simply returning a book." She held it up as evidence and observing. "As a friend," she smiled at Himari. "As your very good friend, return the book and go," said Himari. "Already going," said Minna pleasantly. She looked at me on her way past. "Nice working with you, Itsuki." The library door clicked shut behind her. We stood in the silence she left behind. I looked at Himari. She was pressing one hand lightly against her forehead with the expression of someone who had just seen a natural disaster forming on the horizon. "She is going to say something," I said. "Yes," said Himari. "To everyone?" I asked. "Probably," she said. I told her that was going to create a situation. She said she was aware of that. "Does it bother you?" I asked. It was the same question she had asked me. Turned back around. She noticed. I could see her notice. She looked at me for a moment, then at the floor. "I do not know yet," she said, which was a different kind of answer than I had expected. Less deflection in it than usual. More like something she had said because she actually meant it. We finished with the last of the boxes and brought everything to the front desk. The librarian stamped a record without looking up. We walked out into the corridor together. The school was nearly silent by now. Just a thin strip of pink and orange still clinging to the bottom of the sky outside the windows. Our footsteps echoed more than they should have. Near the top of the staircase, Himari stopped. I stopped beside her. She was looking at something outside the window for a moment. Then she turned to me. "Itsuki," she said quietly. Earlier today, when you said both versions are real. She paused. Did you mean that, or were you just trying to say something that sounded right? I looked at her directly. I meant it, I said. She held my gaze for a second. Then she nodded. Not dramatically, not with any performance around it, just a small, quiet nod, like something had settled. She turned and started down the stairs. I followed a step behind, and as we reached the bottom and pushed out through the side door into the cooling evening air, I was already aware of one thing. 2 days ago, Himari had been the loudest girl in my class and nothing more than that to me. A disruption. An inconvenience. Someone I had a clear strategy for managing. Now she was something I did not have a category for yet. Something I was going to have to figure out while pretending very convincingly that I was not figuring it out at all. That was going to be significantly harder than anything else I had attempted this entire week. And the week was only Tuesday. Outside, near the school entrance, a figure was waiting. Tall, neat, the kind of compose that takes practice. The young man from the year above. He spotted Himari and moved toward us with easy confidence. Himari, he said. She stopped. Her whole body went just slightly careful in a way I would not have caught yesterday. Kazeyama-senpai, she said. Her voice shifted into something more formal, more managed. The older boy glanced at me briefly, then back at the young woman beside me. I have been trying to reach you, he said. About what we talked about. His voice was calm and gentle, also persistent. I know, she said. I will message you later. He looked at her for a moment. It is important to me, he said. She said she understood. He nodded, said goodnight, and walked away. We stood there after he left. I did not ask. I had promised myself I would not ask. But apparently the version of me that made promises in empty classrooms and the version that was standing here now had different limits. Who was that? I said. Himari looked at me sideways. You actually asked, she said, like she was noting something unexpected. I said it was just information. She said of course it was. He is a senpai from the festival committee, she said after a moment. I said right. She looked at me. He confessed to me last week, she said simply, like something she was tired of carrying. I did not say anything right away. She watched me not say anything. You are doing the face again, she said. I told her I was not doing any face. She said I definitely was. I have not answered him yet, she added. Why not? I asked. The question was out before I had finished deciding to ask it. She looked at the ground for a moment. Because, she said slowly, I do not know what I want yet. She looked up at me then, in the fading last light of the evening, and I think I need to know that first before I can answer anyone. I did not respond. She studied my face for a second, like she was checking for something. Then she smiled, very small, and said goodnight. She turned and walked toward the gate. I stood at the entrance of the school long enough to watch her go, longer than made sense, and the feeling sitting in my chest was not one I had a clean name for. But it was there, and it was inconveniently loud. 2 days ago, Himari had been something I was actively trying to stay away from, and now, somehow, without any clear decision on my part, I was standing outside school at dusk thinking about her answer. Not just what it would be, but what I actually wanted it to be. And that was the part that was going to cause me the most trouble going forward. Wednesday arrived the way Wednesdays always do, without warning and with a specific energy of a day that has decided it is going to be more complicated than the ones before it. I walked to school at the same time I always did. Same route, same shoes, same bag. Everything exactly as it had been before any of this started, at least from the outside. On the inside, I was still working through the problem of Tuesday evening, specifically the part where I had stood outside the school gate longer than necessary, watching Himari walk away, specifically the part where the question in my head had not been what her answer to Kazeyama would be, but what I actually wanted it to be. That part kept coming back uninvited. I reached the school, changed my shoes, and told myself clearly and firmly that today was going to be a normal day. No boxes, no empty classrooms, no borrowed pens. Just a regular Wednesday. I stepped into the classroom. Himari was already in her window seat. She looked up when she heard my footsteps and smiled. Not the big performance one, the smaller one. The one I had apparently learned to tell apart. You came at normal time today, she said. I told her yesterday had been an exception. She said I was capable of being early when motivated. I said I had not been motivated. I sat down and put my bag on the desk. She had not left anything on it this morning. No milk carton, no melon bun, just my plain empty desk. Somehow that felt like its own kind of statement. No bribe today, I said, mostly to myself. She heard it anyway. You noticed, she said. I told her I was simply observing. She said that was the same thing. I said it was not. She turned back to the window. The morning light was coming in at a low angle, the kind that makes everything look slightly warmer than it actually is. She was looking at something outside or possibly at nothing. I realized I had been expecting something. The milk carton, the bun, some small act that said the deal between us was still in place. Its absence made the morning feel slightly off balance. The classroom around us was filling up the way it always did, voices layering over each other, chairs scraping, bags dropping onto desks. The ordinary noise of 20 people starting their day. And somehow, underneath all of that, I was sitting at my desk having quiet thoughts about a girl at the window seat. which was not something I had been doing a week ago. The week had done a lot of damage to my routines. I was thinking, she said after a moment, still looking out the glass, that I should not keep buying your silence with convenience store items. It sets a bad precedent. I told her the precedent had already been set. She said she was trying to revise it. I said revising precedents was not that simple. She said she was aware of that. The window held her attention for another second. Then she turned to look at me directly. So instead of a bribe, she said, I want to ask you something properly. Without making it into a joke, I waited. Why are you still being normal around me? She asked. The question came out flat and genuinely curious, with no deflection built into it. I looked at her. What do you mean? I said. She said carefully, that most people, after seeing what you saw, either get weird and distant or they get too close too fast, because they think they know something now. She tilted her head. But you were just being normal, which is strange, because nothing about this situation is normal. I considered that for a moment. Maybe I do not think what I saw changes anything that was already true, I said. She looked at me steadily. And what was already true? She asked. I said, that you are a person, not a version of one. The young woman stared at me for several seconds. Then she made a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and something else entirely, and turned back to face the front of the room. I stared at the desk for a moment after that. I had not planned to say it exactly that way. It had come out more directly than intended. But looking at her reaction, I did not feel the need to take it back. The strange part was that I meant it fully. Seeing her cry had not made me think less of her or more of her. It had just made her a more complete picture. And I had simply said so. That was apparently not a common response, which said something uncomfortable about the kind of responses she had been getting from people up until now. You are going to be a problem, she said quietly. I told her she had already said that. She said it bore repeating. I said I would take that under consideration. We did not talk again before the bell rang. The morning unfolded normally enough on the surface. Classes moved forward at their usual pace. The teacher wrote things on the board. People took notes or pretended to. The usual machinery of school kept running. But underneath that, something had shifted slightly in the arrangement of the day. Himari did not come to my desk during the break. She stayed with her usual group, laughing at something one of them said. I watched this from my seat without meaning to, and then looked back at my textbook. She was fine. She was doing exactly what she always did. There was absolutely no reason for me to register the difference, except that I did register it, clearly and immediately, which told me something about how quickly my baseline for normal had rearranged itself over the past 2 days without asking my permission first. At the second break, Minna walked past my desk and dropped a folded piece of paper on it without slowing down. I looked up. She was already on the far side of the room. I unfolded the note under my desk. It said, she told me a little, not much, but enough. You seem like a decent person, so be careful with this one. She is not as tough as she looks. No signature. I did not need one. I looked across the room. Minna was still examining the bulletin board with tremendous interest in whatever was posted there. On the other side of the room, Himari was talking to 2 girls from another class. I folded the note and put it in my pocket. I did not know what Minna thought she knew or what Himari had told her, but the note sat there for the rest of the morning with a weight larger than paper. The part that stayed with me was the last line. She is not as tough as she looks, which implied that Minna had seen something I had only just discovered and had been seeing it for much longer than 2 days. That meant the version of Himari that the whole school knew, the one who walked into rooms and made the air feel more alive, had always been sitting on top of something heavier than anyone around her quite understood. Minna, who was loud and nosy and apparently very good at reading situations, had been watching Himari and worrying quietly from a distance. I found myself thinking better of her than before she dropped that note. The afternoon came. The teacher assigned the 2 of us to clear the remaining materials from the previous day's task and deliver them to the archive room on the ground floor. Of course he did. I picked up my share without comment. Himari picked up hers. We walked out of the classroom side by side and down the corridor toward the staircase. The school was still loud around us. Daytime loud. Minna talked to you, she said. It was not a question. I said yes. She asked what Minna had said. I told her the general outline. Himari was quiet for a few steps. She worries, said Himari. I know that. She just has a very loud way of doing it. I said the note had not been particularly loud. Himari looked sideways at me. She left you a note. Short one. I said. What did it say? She asked. I told her it said to be careful with her. Himari looked forward again. She did not say anything for several steps. She thinks I am fragile, said Himari finally, in a tone that was hard to place. Not quite defensive, not quite resigned, somewhere between the two. I said I did not think that was what Minna meant. What do you think she meant? She asked. I said I thought Minna meant that Himari was carrying something and had been carrying it for a while, and that people who do that sometimes get dropped without warning. The young woman beside me did not respond to that immediately. We went down the staircase and turned into the ground floor corridor. The archive room was at the far end, past the science classrooms. That is a generous reading, she said. I said it was what I got from the note. She said Minna was not usually subtle. I said maybe she was trying something new. Himari looked unconvinced. We reached the archive room. I pushed the door open and held it while she went in first. The room was dim and smelled like old paper and wood and the particular kind of dust that collects in places people rarely visit. We found the right section and placed the materials in their correct spots. The work was quiet and methodical. I had grown used to working next to her in silence. That itself felt like information. Can I ask you something? I said after a few minutes. She said I could. I said, the senpai, Kazeyama. What did you tell him last night? She paused in the middle of placing a folder. I said I would think about it. She replied. I nodded. She looked at me. Does that bother you? She asked. I said I was not sure. She said that was honest for someone who usually chose words carefully. You keep saying I am honest. I said. You keep being honest. She replied. I thought about that. Most people seem to prefer it when you are not. She added, not bitterly. Just as a fact she had observed over time. Some things are easier to say when you are not performing anything. I said. She looked at me for a moment. You mean like right now? She said. In an archive room with no audience. I said yes. Exactly like that. She set the last folder in its spot and straightened up. Dust moved in the thin light coming from the small high window near the ceiling. She looked at it for a second, watching the particles drift. There was something about rooms like this that made people say real things. Too quiet to keep anything inside. Too removed from the rest of the school to feel like words said here would travel back out. I had noticed that Himari always chose her moments carefully. The real things only came out in between spaces. Empty classrooms, library corners, corridors after school. Never anywhere with an audience. That was its own kind of information. It meant she knew the difference between what she was saying and what she could afford to let people hear. It meant the real Himari had been managing herself for a long time. I have been thinking about what you said yesterday, she said. Which part? I asked. The part about both versions being real, she said. The one I show and the one I do not. That they are both actually me. I waited. She kept looking at the light. Most people, when they find out someone has a hidden side, decide the hidden one is the real one, or they get uncomfortable and pretend they never saw it. I know, I said. She nodded. You didn't either, she said. I told her I had simply said what I thought was accurate. She said that was the thing. She had not expected accurate. She had expected one of the two options. It changed something, she said quietly. Not looking at me, still looking at the dusty light near the ceiling. I do not know what exactly, but it did. I did not say anything. She had not asked me to. She turned to face me then. The dim light of the archive room caught the edges of her hair and the careful expression she was wearing. The one that was neither the performance nor the tears, but something in the middle. Itsuki, she said, I am going to keep showing up near your desk, and I am probably going to keep borrowing things I do not need. And I know that is inconvenient for a person who wants a quiet life. I looked at her. Why? I asked. She held my gaze. Because, she said slowly, you are the first person in a long time who looked at all of me and did not immediately try to fix it or file it away neatly. The archive room was very quiet. Outside somewhere a club was running drills and someone was blowing a whistle at regular intervals. The sound came through the wall faint and distant. I am not good at this, I said. She asked what I meant, being someone's person. I said, I do not have a lot of experience with people, being close to them, knowing what they need. I am not built for it naturally. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I am not asking you to be built for it. I am asking you to just keep being what you already are. I thought about that. And what am I already? I said, someone who does not look away. She said simply. I held that for a second. Then I said, that I can probably manage. The corner of her mouth moved. Something real. Something that cost her a little. We carried the empty boxes back out of the archive room and returned them to the supply area near the teacher's office. Then we walked back upstairs in the direction of the classroom to get our bags. The hallway was quieter now, late enough in the day that most of the students who were not in clubs had already gone home. Our footsteps echoed the way they always did in the evening quarter. The thing with Kazeyama, she said out of nowhere, still walking. I said yes, she said. He is a good person. Kind and organized. He genuinely cares about people. I said that sounded like a recommendation. It does not it? She said, and there was something wry in her voice. But that is the problem. He is all of those things and I cannot make myself feel what I think I'm supposed to feel, and I do not know why. I said nothing. She continued. Everyone around me thinks I should just say yes. He is nice. He likes me. He would treat me well, and I agree with all of that. I just cannot make the math work inside. The math, I said. The part where everything adds up correctly on paper, she said. But something in the total feels wrong. And you cannot explain it to anyone because all the numbers look right. I understood what she meant. I did not say so immediately because I was also thinking about why she was telling me this specifically. Here, in this particular quarter, at this particular time of day. You do not have to say yes to something that does not feel right, I said finally, even if the numbers look correct. She glanced at me sideways, even if everyone thinks it makes sense. She asked, especially then, I said. She nodded slowly. We reached the classroom and pushed the door open. The room was empty now, just the desks and the low late light coming through the windows. We got our bags from our respective desks. I slung mine over one shoulder. She stood near her window seat for a moment, looking at the desk, not moving to leave yet. "Itsuki," she said without turning around. "Yes," I said. She was quiet for a second. "What would you do?" she said carefully. "If someone you had not expected showed up and rearranged something you thought was settled?" The question sat in the room between us. I looked at the back of her head. The evening light caught her hair again, that same warm orange that had been following both of us through this entire week. "I would be annoyed," I said. "Obviously." She made a small sound. "And then I thought about it honestly. And then I would figure out the thing I thought was settled was never actually settled." She turned around then. Her expression was open in a way I had not seen before. Not the performance, not the tears, not the careful middle ground, just open. Looking at me directly without any of the usual management. "That is a very complicated way of saying something simple," she said. I said I was aware of that. She said, "Say the simple version." I looked at her for a moment. "The simple version," I said, "is that you are already harder to ignore than I planned for. And I planned fairly carefully." She held my gaze. A second passed, then another. Then she laughed. "A real one, not the performance version, not the careful quiet one she used in private, but something in the middle that I had not heard before, warm and a little startled and completely unguarded." "You are the worst," she said, still laughing. I said I had been trying to tell her that since Monday. She said I had been right. I said I usually was. She said that was an overstatement. I said it was rounding. We walked out of the classroom together, down the hallway, down the stairs, and out through the school entrance into the evening air. The sky had gone from orange to a deep blue at the edges. At the school gate, we slowed down without deciding to. The kind of slowing that happens when neither person is in a hurry to end something but neither wants to be the one who says so directly. "What are you going to tell Kazeyama?" I asked. She looked at the road ahead. "The truth," she said. "That I cannot give him an answer that would be fair to him right now, and that he deserves a fair answer." I nodded. She looked at me. "Is that okay?" she asked. The question surprised me slightly. "You do not need my approval," I said. "I know," she said. "I am asking anyway." "Yes," I said. "It is okay." She held my gaze for just a moment. Then she looked away and tucked her hair behind one ear and said goodnight, the same way she had said it the night before. But this time, she did not walk away immediately. She stood at the gate for one more second, like she was deciding something. Then she said, "Tomorrow morning early." I looked at her. "No boxes this time," she said. "No task. Just early, if you want." She said it without a command, without performance. Just an offer placed plainly and left for me to take or not take. I looked at her, the blue evening behind her, the school building behind that, the week that had started with me wanting nothing more than to get through my days without incident or complication. "I will think about it," I said. She smiled. "That small real one, that is basically yes," she said. I said it was definitely not yes. She said it absolutely was. I told her not to get ahead of herself. She laughed again and walked away through the gate, and I stood there watching her go for the second evening in a row, which was already a pattern I had not had at the beginning of this week. I turned and started walking in my own direction. The evening air was cool, and the street was quiet, and in my chest the feeling I had been unable to name for 2 days was still there. The streetlights were flickering on one by one down the road. I walked past the convenience store, where I sometimes stopped on the way home, and did not stop tonight. I did not have the right appetite for it. I kept thinking about the question she had asked me in the empty classroom. What would you do if someone showed up and rearranged something you thought was settled? And I kept coming back to the answer I had given her. The honest answer. The one I had not filtered. Because somewhere between Monday and Wednesday, I had stopped filtering things around Himari. And I could not quite track when that shift had happened. But it was slightly less in name than before. I still had no exact word for it. But I knew its shape better now. And somewhere underneath the irritation, I found I was not actually trying to make it leave. By the time I reached my street, I had already decided I was going in early tomorrow. I was not going to admit that to anyone, but I had decided it clearly, without much debate, which told me everything. 2 days ago, I had a plan. A very reasonable, very sustainable plan. Keep to myself. Stay quiet. Reach graduation without complications. It was a good plan. Solid. Proven. Mine. Himari had walked through it with the same ease she walked through everything, which was to say without appearing to try at all. And now I was standing on my own street in the dark wondering what exactly came next. The answer was that I did not know. I had not known anything clearly since the moment in the empty classroom doorway, but the not knowing had a different quality to it now than discomfort. It was closer to anticipation. And that, I thought, walking up to my front door, was the most inconvenient thing she had done to me yet. More than the boxes, more than the borrowed pen, more than the melon bun with terms and conditions attached. She had made me curious about what came next. And once it happens, there is no clean way to undo it. There is only forward, whatever that looks like, whatever it turns out to be, starting with early tomorrow morning. If this story got to you, leave a comment telling me which moment hit the hardest. And if you want to see where Itsuki and Himari go from here, you already know what to do.